If you don't know, Pauline, her father has transitioned to heaven. So we just ask that you keep us in your prayers, keep Pauline, keep her mom and the rest of her family in your prayers this week. We truly would appreciate it. And we believe that God is going to help us transition through this period. And we appreciate all your prayers and support. Now let's get to this week's episode of the W Podcast. What's up, fam? Welcome back to our channel. My name is Tim, and this is the W Podcast. So excited that you're joining us this week. I know we started off a little somber, but let me tell you, this week's episode is amazing. We're going to tell you what you should know as a single, whether you're dating, whether you're engaged. Here's some things you want to make sure you know before you get married. There may be a lady out there who's like, I have an amazing boyfriend, but he hasn't brought up marriage yet. And I'm starting to wonder, we've been dating 6 months, a year, 18 months, whatever a long time is to you. He hasn't brought up marriage yet. What should I do? In this clip we're about to get into, we're going to walk you through how do you navigate that situation where your boyfriend hasn't brought up marriage. Should you be the one to bring it up? Should you just break up with him and be like, look, you wasted my time? Let's get into it.
I just recently discovered you guys and absolutely love the podcast. Thanks so much. We love you too. My boyfriend and I, so this is a girl, are both active in our churches. Same church, different cities. We are 2.5 hours away from each other. I have certainty that God placed him in my path. We've already had so many struggles in the year we've been together. Actual boyfriend-girlfriend for 7 months. But from my ex trying to start up rumors, not understanding how to love each other because of the way we were raised, his dad passing this August. We've been
through a lot of stuff. Let's just pause here because this is a lot.
Yes.
I just wanted to, it's a long question. Praise God.
We've been through a lot. Thankfully, we both allow God to mold us and have compromised on many things. He didn't like physical touch. I loved holding hands. He's more logical. I'm more emotional, etc. We've talked about marriage and it seems to be a topic up in the air. He says he wants to marry me, but we never seem to get anywhere past that. In his head, he wants to have a full-on career before marriage. No apartment to start off with. He wants to already have a house, etc. I understand he wants us to be stable and taken care of beforehand, but it makes me think I might not be getting the ring anytime soon. He always says, on God's time, but I tell him, God isn't going to come down until you two propose. God will take care of us. But anyway, any thoughts on this? Am I being too pushy? I struggle with temptation with said ex, so I know I don't want to fall into that with my man, but I don't want to also play with fire if we have to wait too long to get married.
Yeah, love this question. Great question. First of all, thank you for rocking with us and loving our podcast. And yeah, long question, but it's good because now we can give you a thorough answer. So even though it's long, we still love you. I don't think you're being too pushy at all. You've been dating, was this the one? 7 months? I don't think that's too pushy, especially depending on how old y'all are. Like, a lot of relationships, the older you are, the quicker it seems the relationships go. So I don't think you're being too pushy, especially because it's not like you're saying, at least you didn't write, that you're saying, you need to marry me today. Or I need to be
like
married.
An ultimatum.
Yeah, it's not an ultimatum. You're just asking, hey, like, what are your plans? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Actually, we encourage women, if they're not getting those clear answers, to ask questions. I think, unfortunately, a lot of men can fall into this situation where, and their hearts are in the right place, so no judgment most of the time. Their hearts are in the right place of, I want to provide, I want to make sure I have a certain lifestyle, and obviously I 100% respect that. But I think sometimes we can use that, it comes in two ways. Sometimes that can be a scapegoat, unintentionally, unconsciously sometimes, of they're not really ready to get married, so they're using this, oh, I want to have this in place.
But if it's always like a moving finish.
Right, it's always like a moving, I gotta have a house, I gotta have this type of job. And it's like, all right, I know those things ain't really coming soon, and it gives me more time to continue dating you because I love you, but marriage scares me. That could be one. I'm not saying that's your boyfriend, but that could be an option. The second thing is, some dudes really just have bad intentions, or their intentions aren't clear in the sense that they like you, but they don't really want to marry you. They like the company. They just want to
leading on,
kind of leading you on. And I'm not saying again that that's your boyfriend, but for someone that's in a situation like this, that could be the case. And here's what I suggest. And I know that you said, I believe that like y'all have had some conversations, but they haven't gone anywhere. I would suggest you talk to him and say, hey, next week, the end of this month, whatever, let's sit down. I want to have an honest conversation about marriage and be upfront and say, hey, this is not going to be a conversation of me bombarding you. Why haven't I gotten a ring yet?
Yeah.
This is going to be a conversation of us learning each other, and I want to be able to share my heart about what I feel about marriage and like where I would like us to be, and then I want you to be able to share your heart on where you are. And this should really be a safe conversation, maybe at a neutral site like a Panera Bread or something like that, and maybe you all have time to pray about it before you even go into the meeting individually. And really, the point of this conversation is to share your hearts. So there's no judgment. Whatever he says is how he feels. Whatever you say is how you feel. But the goal is to be able to understand where this person is.
Right.
Because right now, I don't feel like you really know where he is. Obviously, he's saying, like, I don't want to get married because I want to have a house and all this stuff. But this conversation needs to be why.
Right.
I need to understand why do you need that?
Yeah.
Why do you feel that? It's because you want to learn his heart. Maybe because of his background. Maybe he saw his parents struggling and he doesn't want to go through that. And you just never know what fears people are going through. But this could be such a healthy conversation for you to get to know him. Like, okay, that's why you think that way. And then this could be an opportunity for you to be able to share your heart and be like, hey, this is why I want to get married.
Right.
Because I don't want to fall into sin. Because I love you. Because I want to start building my life together.
Right.
And I think that's so key because he may not really understand how important it is for you all to have some type of clear direction towards marriage, because maybe you haven't been able to fully articulate it. Maybe you're still thinking about it yourself, but when you come to that meeting, you'll have had time to really sit down and say, this is what I need, this is why I need it. And then after you leave that conversation, let's be honest, y'all, we're all grown, all right? Dating is about evaluation, and I know it's hard because you're talking to somebody, those heartstrings start coming in, but at the end of the day, we can't be with people who aren't willing to move forward. Yeah. And if you're dating somebody and you have a conversation with them and you realize that you all are not close to that marriage timeline and you've been dating for a reasonable amount of time where you should be beginning to have those type of conversations, I'm not saying you need to break up in that moment, but what I am saying is I would definitely advise getting some mentors involved, getting pastors involved to sit down with you both, because it's always good when you can have another man look another man in the eye and be like, bro, I 100% get it. But let me tell you that is not what matters the most when it comes to a marriage. Because we know people, we all have known people who had all the money in the world and could move into a house and their marriage didn't last 72 days. Yeah. Like, that's just what it is.
That's how it's going to make your marriage strong.
What makes your marriage strong is character, commitment to each other, the willingness to put in the hard work, the willingness to forgive, foundation on Christ, like all of those things that will bring the marriage together, not money. Right. And unfortunately, money
or milestones.
Money sometimes can cloud our judgment. 100%. I've heard a pastor say, like, money, everybody thinks it's like the number one thing, but they're like, money's not even in your top three. Because if I told you I would give you $1 million today, but you were going to die tomorrow, would you still take the $1 million? Right. If I told you I was going to give you $1 million today, but your mom was going to pass away, would you still take it? Like, no, you wouldn't, because that's not the number one thing, even though our minds sometimes try to make us think it is. And I just think maybe being able to have somebody else, because he may not be able to hear this from you. Right. Because all he may hear is you pressuring him for a ring, even though that's not your heart. But that could just be how he takes it because of whatever. So I think sometimes when you can involve wise counsel, that really helps be able to help them see it from a different perspective that's not you.
Yeah, so good. So really, I love the suggestion of like having an intentional meeting so that no one's blindsided and he can feel prepared. I would also, I mean, even just add to that point, like really what you want is context. So like, because I think as women, sometimes we struggle. Like, we don't mind waiting or, like, we don't mind things not being on our timeline, but we need a timeline. So, even if it's like, you know, okay, you don't want to get married this year, I understand that. Are you willing to get engaged? Like, kind of let me know. Like, give me some type of, you know, idea. And, you know, I'm sure him saying things like, oh, on God's timing, like, that's super, super vague. And, like, yeah, and, like, just like you said, depending on where he is in life, like, getting a house, like, that may not be for, like, 10 years.
Can I just say, maybe you were able to speak on this, that I didn't even, like, really get to process, like, his dad passing in August, like, how much of an impact that could be having on, like, his situation.
Well, right, and that's why you want more context. Like, you just really want to know, like, okay, like, in general, like, do you want to get married? Yes, you do. Okay, great. Like, you respect and honor the institution of marriage as something that you want to participate in. Like, do you want to participate with me? Okay, great. Like, when do you want to do that? Like, we have to work through all the different layers of this. But I would say just keep an open hand. I know that you said you're very certain that, like, this person is from God. And I think, you know, I've definitely been in a situation where I felt like somebody was, like, the one for me, or the person that I wanted to be with. But it takes more than love and, you know, kind of having a good relationship to enter into marriage with somebody, just like you spoke about, like lifestyles and like just different things aligning, and timing is a big part of that. Like, some people say, like, right person, wrong time is the wrong person, and I hope that you're not like hearing me of like, okay, she just wants us to break up, because that's not the case at all. But I do think that it's really hard to hear when you're only listening for certain things. So like, he may have been giving you clues the whole time. And yes, he does need to be clear with you about, you know, a timeline and kind of like what the next year, 6 months, year of his life is going to look like, or what he wants it to look like. But I also think, too, that, you know, love is blind, love is deaf. Like, we miss out on a lot of things and a lot of clues. That's why it's always good to have community. But you also need to be open to hearing what your community has to say. If you are pretty much like, nope, this is the guy, we're going to get married as soon as possible. Because I know that you mentioned that because of your own past and your own context, like, you don't want to fall into sin, which is obviously a great, you know, thing to not want to do. It's a good heart, but also, like, just, that doesn't mean that marriage is right now. Like, sometimes we want to just get a quick fix to things. Like, marriage doesn't heal lust. Marriage doesn't cure porn addiction. It only magnifies problems that we already have, so it's going to be really, really tough, and I want you to go into marriage with proper expectations. I want you to be prepared. I know that you're not talking about running down the aisle and skipping premarital counseling and all those different things, but you also don't want to drag a man down the aisle. So, and I know that that's not what you want to do, but, or specifically with this guy, but I also think that, you know, having these courageous conversations, you know, as Tim mentioned with, you know, you guys sitting down at a Panera or something like that, like, you have to be ready for whatever his response is going to be or not be. Because if you have this meeting, that doesn't mean he's like, all right, cool, like, I'm going to make this timeline up now, because he really may not be ready for that. I don't know. And like, how this whole process kind of goes will tell you a little bit about his leadership and just where he is, and you asking yourself, like, do I want to follow somebody who's, you know, this is where they are in their life, and that's fine, you know, to grow with people and things like that. But just keep an open hand and open heart towards the Lord. If he brought this person into your life, like, he will work it out, and if he brings this person out of your life, he'll bring somebody else in.
Yeah, and by no means are we saying that your boyfriend or anybody else in this situation is a bad guy or is leading you on, because they're not clear on where they are right now. But what we are saying is, it's kind of a red flag if you say, I want to have this healthy conversation, and they are pushing you off. Then I would have a problem, because I'm just trying to seek clarity. I'm trying to help us connect with each other on a deeper level, and you not wanting to have a conversation is hindering us from that. To me, that's a problem. All right, I hope you enjoyed that clip. Let's move into our next clip, where we're going to be talking about divorce. Now, don't get freaked out if you hear this. Sometimes it's good to be able to learn from somebody who did something that we don't want to do, because we can learn what not to do. See, I'm an older sibling, so I don't know what that's like, but some of y'all are younger siblings, and you looked at your older brother, saw him get his butt whipped, and be like, you know what? Or saw her and be like, you know what? I ain't doing that. I'm not going to make that mistake. Sometimes it's good to be able to learn from somebody else's mistakes. And we have an amazing guest, Tiffany, who is going to share in this clip what she wish she did differently, what she wish she knew before she got married. Now, there is no shame if you have already been divorced. Please hear me. There's no shame. We just want to help everyone learn from these mistakes so that they don't have to go through the same pain that you would say you don't want them to go through. So tune in, get ready. This is good. We love to be practical on the show and try to meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. So do you think, from your perspective, that there's anything that can be done for somebody that's single right now? Maybe they're dating. What's something that they can be doing? Because the truth is, we all have long suffering that we are doing in every season. Yeah. So how would you suggest or encourage somebody to work that muscle So that way, when they get to marriage, it's not such a shock of, oh my gosh, I need to be long suffering.
I love this question so much because one, and it's funny, one of my coworkers at Miller Media, who I've stolen this from, she talks about how our friendships really help prepare us for marriage. And I think it's so true that, but not even just friendship, you know, maybe there's a friend, but I would even just say specifically to pray and ask God, you know, what relationship in my life can I use to develop this muscle? And it's probably going to be someone that, you know, irritates you a bit, maybe rubs your, like you got to almost pray sometimes when you interact with them. Good. That person, somebody's face just came up, you know, and allowing that relationship to grow the muscle. How can you be more patient in their space? How can you resolve conflict in a way that's more calm, where you don't, you know, raise your voice, or you don't respond in a way that you normally do? And I think if you can allow that relationship to help stretch that muscle, one of the things I would also say, it's like once you pray and ask God who that person is and he reveals them, to begin to add them to your prayer list. Because let me tell you something, nothing can soften your heart like praying for someone. Now, being a co-parent, once I got divorced, I didn't eliminate like my ex-husband. I just talked to him, you know, like we have to still constantly engage. And so one of the things that really helped my heart was praying for him. I still do to this day, like, because it was praying for him, but it was also God trusting me. And so he would begin revealing things to me about him. As I would be in conversation, I would hear his heart in a different way. And it allowed me to respond in a much more calm way. Even if he just said something completely nasty, I would hear, oh, he's in pain. You know what? And I would pray for that. Like, this is stuff I did after we were divorced because I needed a positive co-parenting relationship. So I think those would be the two things specifically. Like, ask God, what relationship, what friendship, which parent, who can I practice on? Who kind of rubs me in it? And I really need to be more patient with them. And then, like, let me begin praying about them and watch how God will soften your heart and allow you to become more gracious and more compassionate. Like, I warn you, as that's happening, you're probably going to start to see yourself a lot more. As you start to see how much grace you need, then it becomes a lot more easy to say, you know what, let me just give him grace because, you know what, we just all here figuring it out. So that's what I would say to that person.
Wow. I love that so much because I say this all the time. Godly dating and godly marriages starts before you get in a relationship. Mm-hmm. And I think you just so clearly highlighted that we should be praying and asking the Lord, hey, what can I be doing now to prepare myself for a season I'm not in right now? And I think you gave such a practical next step. Yeah. A lot of people are in this season are praying and asking God for wisdom for the rest of the year. And I think that's such a great thing to add is, Lord, who should I be connected to right now that is going to help me prepare for marriage when it comes to long suffering, when it comes to being patient, when it comes to forgiving? Because honestly, a lot of people, I'm sure, thought about their dad, or they thought about their brother, or they thought about a cousin or whoever in their life when you said that.
Right.
A lot of people have a clear next step. Now, that being said, we're saying this and people are listening like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't want to go.
That's a good word for somebody else.
Not me. I don't need that.
And the truth is, it's because they don't want to go through pain.
Yeah.
Because it's painful to do that. It's painful to go to somebody and that you know gets on your nerves and try to pray for them. It's painful. Yeah. But what you're saying from your story is that it would be worth it to do that on the front end.
Yeah.
Than to go through the pain of not doing that on the back.
And you basically have to choose your heart, right? Because like what you described of your story and co-parenting and how God has been changing your heart through that relationship. Because I think it's just so easy for culture. In culture, we just want to cut people off. I'm like people. I'm just like, you're too much. Bye. Like I'll get another friend or like whatever.
Right.
But that's one of the beautiful messy parts of marriage is like you can't just cut somebody off. Like
you
can't run away. You all live together. Everything is intertwined. And like if you do have a child, that child will be there forever. And it's not even like, you know, you were trying to run away from one another because y'all have a relationship now because of your son.
Right.
And God has been using that. And I think that people kind of get, you know, like frustrated with that. But I just love you know, that you're highlighting and sharing with us just how, you know, we're supposed to change. Like as you're praying for somebody else, like, oh my gosh, I am so guilty of that. Of like, God, change this person, do this for them, do that for them. Get them, God. Or it's like, God will take care of them, and he will. But I feel like when you were speaking, it was just reminding me so much. I feel like this is going to be such a blessing to a lot of the women that watch and listen, is because like a lot of the enemy has messed with my girls so much to think that God is withholding something from them. But the Bible says that God withholds no good thing from those who walk uprightly. And sometimes you think like, oh man, I'm not married and I'm this age. And what about my eggs? And what about, you know, whatever, all these things that are real, but they're not, you know, God is not unaware of them. And he's putting them, you know, somebody said this on podcast a couple of weeks ago, but like God is playing chess and we're playing checkers. And I was convicted of that. Like, I'm so concerned about the next 6 months, and God's like, I'm thinking about the next 10 years. Setting you up, you know, to be successful in that way. But I think you know, there's so many women I know who just cry themselves to sleep, and they're constantly questioning like their worth and their identity. And does he even see me? And like all my friends are getting married, and you know, one person we know, she's like, you know, I think she's in her mid-30s, and she's like, my friend is on her second marriage, and I've never even been, you know, married at all. And you know, even in the Black community, women feeling like, oh well, the ratios are against me, and you know, all these different things that are real. But
the ratio is real. It's definitely a thing.
No, especially
but God is bigger than the ratio. That's my confession.
Absolutely. But I think you're just reminding us that, you know, God doesn't want to give us anything that's not good for us. And sometimes, you know, we want to go from pre-K to college, and God is like, if you go, you will die. Like, it will not be good for you. Like, and sometimes we beg him so much for things, and he's like, okay, like, you want this more than you want me, if we're being honest. And like, it's going to destroy you. And I think it's just such a good, you know, you're reminding us of that it's like, hey, like, can your heart handle marriage?
Listen, we hope you enjoyed that clip. Who you choose to marry and what decisions you make before marriage do have an impact on your future marriage. So it's a great time. That's why we're so proud of you for listening to the podcast, for being connected to our community here, because you're preparing yourself to not make mistakes that you will regret later in life. Now, let's transition to the next video, where we're talking all about how do you know when you should really make somebody your boyfriend or girlfriend? Because here's the thing, everybody likes to talk about marriage, everybody wants to focus on that, but you have to date oftentimes in order to get married. Now, some people may still be doing arranged marriages. That's a different conversation. But for those of us who are still going to be in the dating process, how many dates should you go on with somebody before you realize we either need to end things here or we need to start taking this a little more seriously? We have an amazing rule that a couple shared that they did that may help you. Check this out.
To me, I was super nervous. I don't know if you guys wanted to back up, but at date number 3, like, I was super nervous before date number 3, because to me, I'm like a 3 date. Is if you don't know a good idea by 3 dates, then it's like, you know, done, like, to me. And so before date number 3, I was like, we haven't had that, like, you know, connection yet. And so I was like, it's either like this date goes well and like we have that like connection, and or it's, I don't know. Like, so I was just super, I put a lot of pressure on date number 3, and I think date number 3 went so well. And like, yeah, I don't know your thoughts on that. But
yeah, date number 3 was, I don't know if you guys want to touch on anything else, but date number 3 was like perfect. I was actually at a, my Bible study at women's group like the night before, and I had the date the next day, and I was talking about it with the girls, and I was like, I'm just like not feeling super like excited or giddy about this date. Like, it just feels like something it was just a different feeling than I've ever experienced. I've had a tendency before to just get really giddy about guys that I probably shouldn't have. And with him, I didn't really feel that like over like wanting to jump in and commit to something. And they actually asked me, they're like, why are you not excited? And they like picked my brain about it so much. And we talked through it. And then they were like, well, what's your like ideal date? And I was like, ideal date would be charcuterie board on the beach. That's like my dream. And I show up to date number 3, and he had like just sent me a location, and it was kind of like the side of this cliff. And he gets out of his car, and I was like, this man has nothing planned. I I was like, I'm starving. Like, what are we gonna do? And then he's like, well, do you want to like walk over here? And we had to like cross over this fence. I think we trespassed and we like climbed down
the wall. I love it.
And I was like, what am I doing? And we like turned the corner and he had set up this whole like charcuterie picnic like on the beach, like
come on, Holy Spirit.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is
Jordan. How did you get that idea? Did you have one of the girls from the Bible study text you?
No. I didn't know anybody in her Bible study. So and she didn't tell me that till like just recent.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like
wow, look at God.
Yeah, and so it was just really cool. Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, and that date was like the environment. I think in my perspective was like the environment that he kind of set up of like almost like he like prepared a place for us, and it was just like really cool to be able to sit and like he came like wanting to learn specific things about me and opened up a lot of conversation and led in a vulnerable way that was like, okay, we can actually like build something. There's something here that we can build. And I felt really safe. I kind of came into that date having like a few things that I did want to bring up and I wasn't sure how I was going to bring them up. But everything just like kind of naturally came up and we like really connected. And that was a date where we were there for a long time, just like sitting on the beach talking. It was like till it was way past dark. So yeah, it was like a really special date.
Yeah, no, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. That was awesome to hear. I'm curious for you, Haley, were you in that same mindset? I know you said that you were like, I'm not really excited about this date, but were you thinking like, if this doesn't go well, I'm calling it? Like, were you in that same mindset?
I think I was also like, I was just not excited. And I think in my mind, I was like, not that I had pressure on it, but I just kind of knew like if I'm still not feeling it after this date, like I might give it one more, but then I'm gonna have to be thinking about like kind of like cutting things off basically, which I like didn't want to do. It's just like not fun to like tell someone you're not interested in them. So I think I was just like, I just really it's I can't even describe it. Like I just kind of felt like just like not super excited, not super nervous. Like it just kind of was, I don't even know. I'm like kind of speechless about it.
And I think both like the first two dates were great. Like they like,
weren't bad.
We're like I thought she was great. She thought I was great. And it was just like, to me, it was like the third date was like, okay, to me, it's like, okay, it's date number 3. You know, like here we are, like we're well into this now to me at this point. And then it's like, what is the missing ingredient? Like, cause I felt like there's just something missing for like a connection. And it was really the vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that's like date number 3 is when we really started getting vulnerable with each other. And that's where I felt like, okay, wow, now like there was that spark, like the vulnerability, and kind of just like went on that path for sure.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because that's what Haley, it sounds like what you were kind of waiting for, like why you didn't want the dinner date as the second date, and you needed those baby steps or to take it one step at a time. And Jordan, of course, was patient and understanding in that. And I mean, I don't know if you consider that a dinner date, but it was perfect for you. It wasn't, you didn't need a sit down dinner to connect with him. It was in a space where you felt safe and it was something that you liked. It was a food and environment that you know that was specific to you. It's just so cool to hear how God intervened. And I think that's my favorite part so far that you all have shared, is just like the God intervention of like, oh, it wasn't my idea. Like everything wasn't so engineered. It was like, okay, this worked out, that worked out. And you know, we have parts of our story that are like that too. That it's like, wow, like only God could have, you know, made this happen. And I think that one of the things that I'm hoping people will hear that you all have shared so far is like, you know, things happen step by step. Like you're not going to fall in love the first date, the second date, and the third date. And I know that, you know, you all have been together for a few months now, and the timeline is so weird. Like we always say, like, okay, if you're 18, like, yeah, you might need to date for 6-7 years because you're 18. Like you don't have, you know, you're figuring your life out. But the older you get, a lot of times you can date faster because you know yourself better. You've just had experience. You know what you like and what you need. But I think just showing, you know, that even if you aren't together for it doesn't take a long time for God to orchestrate things, but also you have to give him space. And I think there are a lot of ladies who are like, if I'm not, you know, in love with him before the first date, then I don't want to go on the date. And it's like, well, let's try to like
Yeah.
just have a conversation first, you know? Did you struggle with that at all of like, you know, feeling, because even you talked about, you know, not being excited for the third date, but how did you stay committed? Like what made you not want to cancel it or like talk to us about that?
I think it was just on our first, because on our first date, I saw so clearly what God was doing in his life, and it lined up so well with like things that I had been praying for, that I had been asking the Lord for, and that I just really felt strongly that I wanted in a relationship. Those things were there on the first date, and I knew like it wasn't this thing of like on the first date where I was like, oh, I have all these feelings for you and I want to like just be with you and I want this to work out. But it was more of a thing of like, like God's doing something here and I want to be here for it. And I want to like, I don't want to like, I'm not going to cut it off until I clearly like know from God that I should like cut this off. And so as I was like praying about things and praying with my small group leading up to that, I never, didn't have the spark yet, but I didn't have a clear, like, no, you need to like cut this person off. And so I think I'm just so glad that I just kind of stayed, and it was like a waiting period, almost like I kind of waited through it, not out of anything other than just like wanting to be obedient and attentive to what the Lord was doing. And then on that third date, it was really him that opened up with a lot of the vulnerability, because I was in a place where I was like, I don't want to share, like I'm not in a place to share my heart with someone unless I know for sure that they're like able to care for it in the way that I need like my heart to be cared for. And he was able to do exactly that. And it did happen through him opening up and sharing things that he'd been through. And it was just kind of this moment of like, oh wow, this is a safe space like for my heart. And then after that was kind of like that night was where I would say there was like a little more of a spark to our relationship. And it was, yeah, it was really like beautiful thing, pace and a way that it happened.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's so interesting. Jordan, I don't think you were saying this is a hard and fast rule, but I think it's something that people listening may want to consider. You said like the 3-date rule. And I think the 3-date is a good timeline. Obviously, it could be a little more, it could be whatever, but I think the 3-date is so good. Here's why. One, when you have 3 dates, like Pauline kind of mentioned, you're forcing yourself to not just give up after the first date and just be like, he didn't make me laugh enough, like I'm out. And it's like, okay, let's just give space to see if something happens. But then on the flip side, when you have 3 dates, you're not going too long where you're opening up your heart to someone that really has no interest in you. And I just think that's a good rule that somebody may want to consider going forward. You know, not just be going on several different dates with somebody and there's no true plan about what you want to happen.
Yeah, Jordan, talk to us about that rule. Like, have you always used it? Where did it come from?
Yeah, so I haven't always used it. I just think to me it's happened a couple times, but it's like there's been a few people that I've gotten to 3 dates and then I just feel like we should not continue on. Like it just doesn't make sense. Like, but I think the 3-date rule is a good rule to use because yeah, it's like Haley was saying, like some people do think like they're just going to be a spark on date 1. And it's like, oh my gosh, like just fall in love. But it's like, there's some stories where it's like date 1, it's like, yeah, they're great. But it's like, I don't know, I need to see more. Like, and so I think that's our story is just like date 1 was great. Like we absolutely enjoyed the date, both of us. And like, we both shared values and it's like, okay, we align, but it's like, that there is going to be where we need to take some more time. So it's like date 2 and then got a little bit more in depth. And then date 3, the vulnerability. And then just now it's like, okay, we're actually have a good foundation now. And I think 3 dates is good for that to like, at least just like you guys said, like create some space and some time to like really just test it out and really see like, can we really build off of this? And I think like in our case, in our story, like date number 3 was like, okay, yeah, we can really, I think it just clicked for both of us. Like we really can build off of this. And like, this is a good foundation.
Yeah, that's good.
I love that because it just sounds so intentional. And I hope that the guys listening, that's helpful for you all, because I know some guys, they feel like, oh, there's a girl I want to take out, or I really want to go about dating as a Christian, but I don't know how to do it in a practical way. And because I know a lot of guys are trigger shy Not because they're not confident in themselves and like, you know, the value that they have as a man, but a lot of times they're like, well, if I go out with this girl, what if she falls in love with me and like I'm not really ready to, you know, I don't want to break a girl's heart. You know, I don't want to ask a girl out and she thinks that like this is gonna turn into marriage. Well, I really just want to get to know her in a one-on-one situation without the distractions of, you know, friends or whoever else is around. So hopefully that is helpful. For any guys listening, is like kind of give yourself a game plan, and it's like, okay, I'm committing, but I'm not over committing.
All right, fam, let me know in the comments, what do you think about that 3-date rule? Is that something that you want to implement? Is that too much time? Is that not enough for you to make a decision? Let me know in the comments. But transitioning to our next video, Pauline and I, if I can just be honest, we have a really good marriage. I don't know if we have a great marriage. That may be a little too presumptuous to say, especially because we only 5.5 years in, but we have a really good marriage. But we are not perfect. Our marriage is not perfect by any sense of the imagination. And as much as we tried our best to prepare ourselves for marriage beforehand, there's still some things we're like, you know what? I wish somebody would have told me this. Now, we're trying to help you in the future, because we're going to tell you some things that we wish we knew before marriage. This is stuff that we didn't learn in premarital books and premarital classes. This is stuff that experience taught us, and hopefully experience won't have to teach you.
I love on-the-spot questions. A lot of people don't, because they're like, oh my gosh, I need to, they're like internal processors.
Right. And that's something that we learned in our marriage, you know, early on, was that Pauline is a verbal processor and I'm more of an internal processor. I need time to think about it. Yeah. I don't want to talk about it because if I talk about it, I don't know what I'm saying yet. Right. Whereas you want to talk about it so you can know what you're saying.
Yeah, I kind of get, that's how I get there by talking.
Honestly, that's another reason why asking questions in your relationship is good, because it can help you learn more about your partner. Because you can learn like, okay, like you can talk on the spot. Or, okay, no, like you need a little time to think about stuff.
Right. And so, some especially some women, like because obviously there are men who are verbal processors, but I do find that more guys are more like internal processors. Like, give me a second. If I say it, I want to mean it. I want to know that, like, kind of a lot of guys are like, my word is my bond. If I say it, I want to know that I mean it. And a lot of girls will put guys on the spot, like, right now, tell me if you're going to marry me. And he's like, I don't know. Like, give me some time. Let me think about it. I'm not sure yet. And like, you have to respect that as well, because you also don't want to chase guys away or disrespect how they process and how they think. So you may say like, hey, I would really love to know your answer to this question. Is now a good time to talk about it, or should we bring it up in a few days? And then that way, maybe you write it down, you text it to him, and he can really go home and think about it on his own. So I think that that's a really, really good point. And I even think, because some women may ask this question, and the ways the guy responds, she may say, oh, he's not serious about me. Because when I asked him this, you know, he just kind of was like, oh, whoa, I don't really know.
I'm just trying to eat this pizza right now.
Right, exactly. Like, I don't think you should, definitely don't, you know, and if maybe, you know, this is not the first time you've taken some of the questions that we've provided to your partner. I think that you never want to blindside anyone. If you guys have been listening to us for a while, you know we're Team No Surprises. And it goes down to something as big as a proposal, all the way something down as like a very intentional question like this. So I don't think that you should surprise your partner. I think you should say like, hey, tonight when we go out, I would love to ask you a couple of these questions. Here they are. So even maybe while he's getting ready for the date, he can kind of like mull them over and he's not surprised, or vice versa for her as well. Don't just like quiz them, because that can feel very intimidating and that can make your night really not fun.
Yeah, you can kind of make it a group thing. Like, hey, let's do this. Let's ask these questions together, because he should be asking you or she should be asking you the same questions.
And that will let you know, again, how serious they are as well. Because if you just ask them these questions and they just answer them and they're not like, well, what about you? That'll let you know, too, that they're kind of selfish.
All right, fam. That's a wrap for this week's episode of the W Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and we want you to know that no matter how prepared you are for marriage, there's still going to be some things that you don't expect, that you didn't account for, that will come up once you're married. But guess what? Because you listen to episodes like this, and I'm sure you do other things to help you prepare for marriage, you're not going to have a long laundry list that you're going to have to learn. You're going to have some few things that you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting this, but you're not going to be starting from ground zero where you're like, I have no idea what I should be doing, how I should be acting in marriage, and we're proud of you for that. So we'll see y'all next week on the W Podcast. Thanks for watching this video.
To get more Christian relationship advice, subscribe to our channel.
And make sure you check out our other videos as well.